Welcome to the Juice Box with Juice Springsteen, covering the week that was in professional wrestling. And hello everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Juice Box. I am Juice Springsteen, and it's been a while since I've done an actual recorded episode running with concurrent storylines. We've had prediction shows, we've had Main Event Maniacs this past week with yours truly, Brian and Jay, all three of us in the booth for Super Brawl 3, the White Castle of Fear strap match between Sting and Big Van Vader. That was a fun episode to record, and I'm glad we got it out there last week for everybody to enjoy. This week, we're in the middle of the build to next Saturday's huge day of shows with AEW All Out happening at 3 p.m., and the conclusion of the night being WWE WrestlePalooza at 7 p.m. It's going to be crazy. We're going to talk about both those cards here in this episode of the Juice Box. Before we do that, as always, follow me on Twitter at JuicySteen, at Juicy Wrestling Closet on Instagram. Subscribe to this show on YouTube at JuicySteen, and you can subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, as well as Spotify and Amazon Music. And if you do listen to it on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via iTunes, go leave a rating and review. Support the show. It helps me out. It helps the show grow. This week, it's been a little bit since we've done a traditional Juice Box where, cover this, cover that. We will be discussing quite a few different topics. So I would wager this is more of a condensed episode in regards of length, but I think we're going to be covering quite a few topics over the course of the duration of this episode. So buckle in for this. But as we start the show, I do want to say this show is going to air Friday, early morning Friday. So before what is going to be an announcement by WWE at 3 p.m. later today, if you're hearing this. So the speculation will be coming from me here before that announcement is made. It's supposed to be a special announcement. It's rumored that WrestleMania 43 will take place in Saudi Arabia. Now, 42 was supposed to take place in New Orleans. Didn't happen. It was promoted for a brief bit, and then, we're changing our mind. We're going back to Vegas. It's so nice. We're going to do it twice, back to back, like 4 and 5. Same venue, same city, which is, very interesting. Now, of course, the rumored locations probably over the next 3 to 5 years included Saudi Arabia, London, New Orleans. Vegas was always in play to come back again, and they're doing it. I also think, Nashville, Chicago, certain Indianapolis will absolutely get one within the next few years. So look out to see where they're going to fall next. My question is, Will the announcement later on today have something to do with a rumor I saw where, yes, WrestleMania, quote unquote, will take place in Saudi Arabia, but will it get the distinction of, the greatest WrestleMania, like the greatest Royal Rumble, and maybe we also have a regular WrestleMania here in North America as well in 2027. I mean, that would be quite unprecedented to have 2 WrestleManias in the same year. And I'm not sure if that's going to happen, but I do think there's an outside shot of it because, the North American fans will vehemently complain, and there will be an uproar that Not that the show is in Saudi Arabia. I'm sure there will be people that say that, but just the fact that the show would not be in North America at all, not really allowing for much travel internationally for everybody to make it easy on them to go to these shows. So, especially when it's your biggest show of the year, that's why I think there is an outside shot that you'll get maybe one stateside, even in Canada, but you also get one in Saudi Arabia. So we'll see what happens with that announcement later on today. I do want to recap the fun that was had at the AEW 2300 residency the last couple of weeks. It's been a lot of fun, and we're going to transition that into the All Out card, of course. Most recently, Toni Storm comes out for a street fight. She does a Sandman-esque entrance, smashes a beer over her head, kendo stick. She also knighted Sir Sandman earlier in the week, which was really cool. And just, man, the homages were aplenty. Hook coming out and attacking some folks, or I think it was Wheeler Yuta specifically, and Hook's music was on the whole time, a la New Jack. Taz got his name immortalized in a banner at the arena, the 2300 arena, the former ECW arena. A lot of cool things took place. The venue looked great. I know a lot of people had complaints about it, but you're going to have that with fans these days, unfortunately. But I felt that it was just great all around to celebrate the past while going forth with the current product. And All Out is really, really shaping up to be a solid show in Toronto. This is going to be a wonderful match, or wonderful card with a lot of good matches on it. It starts at 3 p.m. We didn't get to touch on that. It was supposed to be 7 or 8 p.m., and AEW had the day first. And then WWE announced that WrestlePalooza was not only going to be the first ESPN WWE PLE, but it was also going to be the first one on ESPN immediately. So it happens the same night as All Out. They're placing it at 7 o'clock. And AEW said, you know what? To benefit our fans, and because Forbidden Door and All In Texas did so well in the afternoon, we're going to move All Out to the afternoon. I'm not going to necessarily say that that's not the reason, but I'm also not convinced it was 100% of the reason. And I have a feeling that the change was made due to the time crunch that WWE put on them. Do I agree that AEW should have, changed for that? Maybe not. However, I do see it as an opportunity for AEW. Get the buzz. Put on a hell of a show that you normally do on pay-per-view. You always put on a great show. AEW always puts on a great card during their pay-per-views. So take over. Take over the internet. Put on a hell of a show. Sure, a lot of pro wrestling fans, including myself, will be tuning into WrestlePalooza later that night. But, it benefits no one to not watch both. So if I'm watching and I'm seeing what happens on AEW, they draw some buzz, they get a lot of people talking, have a bunch of cool moments on the show. They kind of steals some thunder from WWE. And instead of competing at the same exact time and competing for that, you get both shows within a 8.5, 9 hour time frame. I will go over the card though. All Out, 8 matches thus far. I would wager they'll announce a 9th. 3-way match for the AEW Unified Championship. Either the Beast Mortos, Mascara Dorada versus either Anthony Bowens or Konosuke Takeshita versus either Michael Oku or Kazuchika Okada, the current AEW Unified Champion. We will have Timeless Toni Storm taking on Jamie Hayter, Chris Statlander, and Thekla for the AEW Women's World Championship. That should be a wonderful match. Another wonderful match on the women's side. Rio takes on Mercedes Moné for the AEW TBS title. The following Wednesday, Dynamite will be in Pittsburgh, and I hope that whether it's at All Out, which I think would be perfect for the buzz, after the match, maybe you get Britt Baker coming back into the fold and have Britt Baker versus Mercedes Moné at the next show, which I do believe would be Wrestle Dream in October. If I'm not mistaken, I do believe it is October 18th, St. Louis, Missouri, first one. It's not in the state of Washington, that Wrestle Dream show. MJF versus Mark Briscoe in a match with no stipulation yet, but I would wager there's going to be one. Not sure what that'll be. The Hurt Syndicate, Bobby Lashley, Shelton Benjamin, and MVP taking on GOA, which is Bishop Khan, Toa Leona, the Gates of Agony, and Ricochet in a trios match. MVP stepping foot in a ring for the first time in a long time. Cannot wait to see him get back in the ring. Jon Moxley, Darby Allin in a coffin match. You know shenanigans will be happening during this match. It'll be brutal. It'll be hardcore. But I like the direction that they're going post, AEW title loss for Jon Moxley at the hands of Hangman. We'll see if this progresses further than the coffin match. Now, this could be a way to write off Jon Moxley for a while. I'm not sure if that's the direction they'll go, but I'd like to think it is. Hangman Adam Page defends the AEW World title against the current TNT champion, but the TNT title not on the line, Kyle Fletcher, the Protostar. However, the Don Callis family is banned from ringside, which will be an intriguing wrinkle to that matchup. And last but certainly not least, Adam Copeland, Christian Cage take on FTR in a straight up 1-on-1, 2-on-2 tag team match. Cope and Cage, Edge and Christian. This is going to be amazing. I'm excited to see them back together as a tag team. Once again, they had a match at Forbidden Door, but this is now against FTR, one of the top teams in the history of professional wrestling, against one of the current top teams in professional wrestling. And FTR kind of helped get Adam Copeland back in the ring training in that 2019-2020 return. So it's cool to see kind of, paying it forward, as it were. And we get to see the match FTR versus Cope and Cage. I'm very excited to see how that turns out. If we get a, pose, a 5-second pose, what have you, we'll see what they want to do. But in Toronto, the reception shall be incredible, and I'm looking forward to it for sure. So, All Out looking to be shaping up nicely. Love what they did at the 2300 Arena. I like their residencies. I really do. And I'm hoping that they can come back to that arena at some point for some shows. I know that the ratings weren't as good as they would have probably liked for those shows, but I thoroughly enjoyed every episode of Dynamite and Collision that they put on at the 2300 Arena. I just felt that it's a unique, historic venue. Tony Khan hadn't been there in 29 years since he was a fan at Chris Jericho's final ECW match, wearing a Taz shirt, fitting as he got to, put Taz's banner up into the rafters. Really, really cool stuff. The ECW homages from Tony Khan are really never ending, and I love that he, he's a wrestling fan, so he wants to pay homage to those that came before him, and it's really, really cool. So, like that little wrinkle to it all, and very interesting what we got going on. Now, another interesting thing in the AEW scope, Bryan Danielson, the American Dragon, being on commentary full-time on Dynamite. Now, I don't know if he'll maybe go to Collision for a couple of shows. I'm not sure what it dictates, or if maybe he'll do a Ring of Honor show. But it looks like he's going to be on Dynamite for the foreseeable future, which I really, really like. He was on commentary at Forbidden Door, and I loved every second that he was on the air. Very insightful, brings a different perspective, and he's good at it. He's really, really good at it. So, especially for a guy that, wasn't necessarily all about promo work, the fact that he gets to be the guy kind of telling everybody about the other wrestlers is another unique way to portray him and how he can put over the talent currently. So I really like that. I do want to mention one more thing here before we switch over to the WWE of it all. And it kind of does, line up with WWE. But there is a rumor that Paramount, who, is really involved in a lot of streaming purchases lately with the UFC rights for, $7 billion. There is a chance Paramount purchases Warner Brothers Discovery. Now, if that were to happen, this is what I fear. I fear that you get Warner Brothers Discovery purchased by Paramount, and on an episode of AEW TV, they have to promote potentially a UFC show, which would then, be terrible, considering UFC and WWE are under the same banner, TKO, and they're aligned together. So for that to potentially be in the cards, it's crazy. I think it's really, really crazy that we could see something like that happen. Just the optics of, we're on Dynamite and don't forget to tune in to UFC. And, you watch a UFC show and half the people there are WWE, related in regards to in the crowd. Because they do. They show up there. You've seen plenty of them show up there. How bad would that look? So I'm hopeful I kind of hope that doesn't happen. Because that could signal some negativity towards AEW, and that way a lot of people are just like, wow, AEW would be done. Paramount would be like, we'll work with UFC, and they're under, TKO with WWE. We're kind of good with that. And I don't know how that would all work, but I'm hopeful it wouldn't be anything negative. But we'll see how that goes. But before we go into the WWE of it all, let's celebrate some anniversaries, shall we? Fall Brawl 95, 30 years ago. Next week, of course, we just celebrated 30 years of the first episode of Monday Nitro. Mall of America, September 4th, 1995. Lex Luger debuts, Ric Flair versus Sting, Hulk Hogan, Big Bubba, Jushin Liger, and Brian Pillman. Pastamania, running wild. So, just a really, unique show that changed everything. Started the Monday Night Wars. A couple weeks later, we get Fall Brawl 95, and that's what I'm talking about here. 30 years since that show. An amazing opening match. Johnny B. Bad, Brian Pillman, one-on-one. Almost a 30-minute match. Really love that. Go out of your way to see that if you haven't seen it before. Craig Pittman and Cobra, where you get to see a rappelling entrance before Sting gets to come down from the rafters from Craig Pittman. DDP takes the World TV title from the Renegade, finally, who had held it since Great American Bash of that year, June. Harlem Heat defeated Bunkhouse Buck and Dick Slater to win the World Tag titles. One of my favorite matches of all time, Arn Anderson, Ric Flair, one-on-one. Arn gets the win. Emotional, technically sound. Go out of your way to watch that match as well. Arn and Rick, one-on-one. And then the main event, War Games, Hogan, Savage, Luger, Sting. It should have been Vader, but Luger was the last-minute replacement. I would like to have seen Vader as a babyface. You got to see it briefly the month prior at Clash of the Champions as Vader took on Arn Anderson and Ric Flair in a handicap match and beat them both. But he left the company. He was never on an episode of Nitro, even though his face is on the video board for that show. And he's in the promo work for Fall Brawl. But card subject to change. And we get Savage, Hogan, Luger, Sting versus the Dungeon of Doom, Kamala, the Zodiac, Shark, and Ming with the Taskmaster. Yeah, it is what it is. But I really like watching these old shows, so 30th anniversary of that show. And 20 years since Fall Brawl 2000. Sorry, 25 years since Fall Brawl 2000. Also September 17th. The final Fall Brawl took place in Buffalo. And this had one standout match, but we'll get there. We had Elix Skipper defeating Kwee-Wee. The Misfits in Action defeated 3 Count. Ron and Don Harris defeated Chronic. Lance Storm defeated General Hugh G. Rection. The Filthy Animals defeated the Natural Born Thrillers in an elimination match. Shane Douglas, Torrie Wilson defeated Billy Kidman and Medusa in a scaffold match. Sting defeated the Great Muta and Vampiro in a triple threat match. Mike Awesome defeated Jeff Jarrett in a bunkhouse brawl. The match that is the most viewed match on most viewed video on the WCW YouTube channel. Scott Steiner, Goldberg, no DQ, one of the best big men fights you'll ever see. One of the best highlights from WCW 2000 you can find. Just a war between the two. Go out of your way to see that. And then Booker T, Kevin Nash in a caged heat match for the World Heavyweight Championship. Not the best way to close out Fall Brawl, but it is what it is. And, there's some highlights in there. Highlights at the 95 and highlights in the 2000 version, depending on where you look. Also want to look at WrestlePalooza. Let's talk a little WrestlePalooza here to close out the show. First and foremost, I would be remiss to not bring up AJ Lee back in the WWE. This was rumored. It was also the worst kept secret, just like CM Punk coming back to wrestling in AEW, which was really cool. Everybody kind of had an idea that would happen, but it was never announced, and then it happened. This was the same thing. Also in Chicago, they teased it, but not really. When Seth and Becky, when Becky costs Punk at Clash in Paris, and I hate, his family sucks, and, I don't know, all these things that they were kind of provoking, and you thought maybe AJ Lee could come back, but you just didn't believe it. You thought it ain't happening, but it happened. Great moment in Chicago a couple of weeks ago now, and actually it was last Friday, as a matter of fact. It's crazy how long these weeks seem, but AJ Lee's back, and now we get WrestlePalooza. There's 4 matches announced. CM Punk and AJ Lee taking on Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch. Mixed tag match. That is going to be riveting TV for sure. Additionally on the card, Io Sky taking on Stephanie Vaquer for the vacant Women's World title. We're not doing predictions just yet. We'll do that next week. Probably 2 separate shows. Here on the Juice Box, where we'll get a prediction show for WrestlePalooza and for All Out. Early reports say I think Io Sky is going to take the L, and we're going to have Stephanie Vaquer as the new Women's World Champion. The Usos reunite to take on The Vision, Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker in a tag match. And then the marquee match, the match that ESPN probably said, you know what? I think this would be a good way to start the ESPN WWE partnership. John Cena, Brock Lesnar, one-on-one. Probably the final time one-on-one. But I have a feeling, and I put it out there, that I would like to see Cena and Lesnar as captains for War Games in November. Not sure if it'll happen, but I think it would be wonderful if it did. Hopefully that comes to fruition. We shall see. But the card, 4 matches thus far. I anticipate at least 2 more matches for this show to bolster it up. I'm not sure what that actually looks like. But WrestlePalooza, ESPN, Indianapolis. I'd wager they're going to get at least another 2 matches to really, really solidify that card. But it looks like a pretty damn loaded card as is. And like I said, I don't care where you stand with pro wrestling. If you're a fan of WWE, if you're a fan of AEW, if you don't like the other company, that's one thing. If you don't watch the other company, you're just missing out. You know, AEW has its own charm and love for all things in-ring, and they do some stories, some longer stories. They've been trying to work on that, and it's been fun to follow them since 2019. You know, WWE has always been there, though. You know, it's the Pepsi, it's the Coca-Cola. It's got legacy stuff. You know, your CM Punks, your Cenas, your Lesnars, guys that have been around for a while that you always come back to see. But they're pretty hot right now. WWE is pretty hot, and they're selling out all these buildings, and they're going to ESPN. They're on Netflix already. It's a big deal, and the shows are not running at the same time. So I am here for All Out and WrestlePalooza all in the same day. What, 8.5, 9 hours of pro wrestling all in one day. Sign me up. So if you're not watching either show, shame on you, unless you can't, find a way to do it. If you're just watching one despite the other, you're missing out. And it's just, that's fine. I'm not really gonna judge you for that, but I'm also gonna say, I hope you realize that you're really not affecting the bottom line either way. I think just sticking it out and watching harms no one. I think you should watch both shows if you can. It's more fun that way. Wrestling is better when there's competition. WCW had that for the better part of 6 years. And now we have AEW, who's been around for 6 years. So just enjoy pro wrestling, man. That's all I could say. In regards to Cena, though, this is the final little thing here I'll note as we get to the end of this episode of the Juice Box this week. It has been reported, but not confirmed yet, that John Cena's final match will take place Saturday night's main event, December 13th, reportedly in Washington, D.C. Not in Boston, and, not the Garden, Madison Square Garden, and not the Boston Garden. There's going to be a few of those shows leading up in November, but nothing to that effect will happen for Cena's final match. It will take place in Washington, D.C. And a lot of rumors are rampant on how it got bid for and how, D.C. won that bid, but Cena looks to have that final match there. But who will it be against? Will it be Gunther? Will it be Dominic Mysterio? Could it be Carmelo Hayes? Could it be Jey Uso? Could it be The Rock? Roman Reigns? Cody Rhodes again? Not sure, but there's plenty of different wrestlers chomping at the bit to get that final match with Cena. And however it happens, I'd love to see how they pull it off. I think Cena is going to be a guy that he is fine with losing on his way out, paying it forward for the betterment of the business. He's a traditional pro wrestling guy, and I think he understands the time-honored tradition and would go out looking at the lights. He'll have his moment. He's had a whole year of moments. He was a bad guy. Now he's back to being a good guy and beloved. And what better way than to close out your career than putting someone, at the forefront of taking you out and ending your career. Even it was already going to come to an end. But this is the guy that did not let you win your last match. And boom, you set them up to really, really have a solid career going forth. He had a great match with Logan Paul at Clash in Paris. I think this Lesnar match is going to be very intriguing because I'm not sure where both guys are physically to have a match in 2025. It's not to say they can't or it's going to be bad, but Lesnar hasn't been around for a couple of years. And Cena hasn't worked with someone like Brock in a very long time. So I'm not sure if it's going to be a sprint, if they're going to make it an Extreme Rules match. I'm not sure what they're going to do, but I will be tuning in to WrestlePalooza after I tune into All Out from Toronto. So, man, loaded week of pro wrestling next Saturday. And quick, concise, but pretty loaded episode of The Juice Box this week. As always, follow me on Twitter at JuicySteen, at Juicy Wrestling Closet on Instagram, at JuicySteen on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, YouTube, and JuicySteen.podbean.com. If you listen to it on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via iTunes, please leave a rating and review for The Juice Box with Juice Springsteen. Helps the show, helps yours truly, and helps spread the word about positive pro wrestling commentary throughout the internet wrestling community, which can certainly use positivity more days than not. So I try to bring that here with The Juice Box. But yeah, a lot of interesting stuff. Week 1 of the NFL season came and went, so that's back in. Everybody's, we're watching football. We got baseball winding down. Hockey and basketball are going to start back up. And pro wrestling, which normally kind of winds down in the fall as we want to lead into Royal Rumble season, seems to be picking up some steam with the ESPN WWE marriage, All Out happening in Toronto, and AEW running, the 2300 Arena. Just a lot more people are talking about in the months that normally would not as be wrestling focused are getting a lot of love these days. And pro wrestling is better with both companies striving to survive, to elevate the other when one is doing their best work. So tune into both, do what you got to do, but mainly tune into this program, The Juice Box. I am, of course, Juice Springsteen at JuicySteen, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. And next week, be on the lookout for 2 predictions episodes: AEW All Out and WWE WrestlePalooza. The predictions shows next week, coming to you right here on The Juice Box. That was The Juice Box with Juice Springsteen. Make sure to subscribe to The Juice Box wherever you listen to podcasts.